Hello YouTube artists, I'm Kelly Hernig and welcome to In the Studio. Today is another part of my study with the book Creative Abstract Watercolor. This book is by Kate Rebecca Leach. It's her first book and I am loving it. I will put the part 1 study down below in the video description box, and this is my part 2. There will be a part 3 and probably a part 4. I'm really enjoying the book and I am using it as a study guide. I mean, I am literally doing every single exercise inside the book because it's helping me loosen up and understand marks and what marks are important to me, which I think is very special because I didn't know I had marks that would relate to just me and that I would appreciate finding that out about myself. So if you are interested in this book or have this book, pull it off your shelf and I will show you a fun way to study with it, learn from it, and find yourself within it. So let's head into study number 2. The part 1 study guide of Creative Abstract Watercolor ended on page 39. So this was where we talked about samples, doing samples, but it was also about technique. So her wet on wet and her philosophy and making marks, seeing what fit with you. So she talked about different paint textures, wet on wet, wet on dry, paint on paint, paint on water, that kind of thing. Using your brush and discovering what your brushes will do for you. Also masking fluid, using your tools, that kind of things. And I loved this part of the book. And at first it's like, do I really want to do that? But it taught me so much. So do not skip the fundamentals of this book for sure. So that took us to page 39. From there, it then went into actual paintings where you're actually trying a technique and making like a picture out of it. And I really enjoyed these sections as well. They were a little harder. I found my comfort zone in these little samples. I really enjoyed making them my own, and I really wasn't thinking about what it's going to look like inside a painting like this. And let me just show you the first one. So you can see it's a lot of textures and it's a lot of techniques that we used on the individual items, but this one you're putting it all together into one piece. She gives great instructions. So she talks about how to just set up the painting, and then she talks about wet on dry, and then it's embellishments, and then it's metallic embellishments if that's the way you want to do it. And I found this really helpful because I find visual learning very easy. I can pretty much copy these as much as I want, and I like that she allows us to do that with her step-by-step photos. But I'm finding too, as I go along, I want this to kind of start out like hers, but I'm finding that I want a little more freedom now into finding my own marks and putting them in areas that I find fit. So this was the first exercise here. It's called Loose Stripes, and this is on page 40. So this was one of my elements pages, my samples, and then we go into page 40. So for mine, what I'm trying to do here in my book is create with colors that I like, right? I'm not a real magenta person. I don't like really bright purples. I am more of a duller, I like a granulating purple if I can find one. And so trying to find the colors that fit me is what I'm really going after. At this point, I don't have any metallic pens, so I'm using some metallic paint watercolors that I have. You can see that they're shiny. And I am trying them out up here. Watch up here. See the metallics? They get a little shiny. You can't really see them on screen except for the shine. So I'm trying to figure out which ones of these I will like with the colors that I'm using. So as I went through here, let me see if you can see the shine of that. So you can see through here there's a lot of metallics. See how shiny it looks on the page? And metallics, really, I'm learning to like them. They are still not my favorite. But what I'm trying here is I'm trying to find my place within the marks. Let me bring this page a little closer. I feel really comfortable with lines. That is really nice. I don't feel comfortable with dots yet. I like circles. Now I'm learning to like the circles, kind of like this down here. I am liking this, but I'm liking this for a couple reasons. I'm liking it where it's a thin part of the circle and then I have a fatter part of the circle. And there's also where I lift my brush, that's the part that gets really heavy. So I'm liking that in the thin areas to the thicker areas, it's thinner. But where I lift my brush in the really thick areas, it's giving me a really nice deposit of color. And I am liking that. This part I have found that is becoming really a mark that I like. Let me bring that up close so you can see that. So you see the thick and the thin and then the heavy deposits there. I also wanted to show you that on each of these marks, each of these colors, I'm using a Pitt pen and a white uniball pen and then the metallics. See the metallics with the shine there? So I'm trying what they look like on the colors. So as I go in here, having fun deciding on what I want my landscape to look like. So here is hers again. And you can see it's a lot different than mine. I really like that. I like finding my own voice. And it's something that I didn't know I had in abstract work. So it's kind of exciting. It keeps me going. It's like, what's next? What's the next exercise? What are we going to be painting? What am I looking forward to? So here I really wanted it to kind of look like a mountainside. And then I added lines just to break it up and really give the mountainside there a little more definition. I like these leaves in here. They were really nice. I went from this more blue violet to the red violet to this really more granulating violet. And I liked how the leaf colors kind of matched the lighter violet here. And then I had this big open area. I find I do better when I leave some white of the paper because it gives my imagination a little bit more than filling it solid. And I'm learning that as I go. I learned that a lot through the little sample areas. If I had white in the paper, I was more drawn to it than if I had filled it solid. And that's just something that I'm discovering after all these pages. So I have enjoyed adding the lines, the little wavy textures. Here it reminded me of just like a pond. Do you see that? Kind of the light here with the scrub here. And then I just had some circles in here, like maybe they were trees, ducks. It didn't matter, but I like the idea that this little section here was of water. That's what it reminded me of. And then as we went down here, I liked kind of the tree forest that was created here. And then these represented rocks to me. So trying to figure out what they mean to me has been another fun thing to explore because I'm trying to figure out, okay, if they're rocks, what would I do to them to add the marks, right? So on this, I wanted to highlight their dark color, but I also wanted to highlight the holes. So they're actually shapes like these. So I added white in the holes and then I just put an outline around them and you can see that here. So the holes are filled in with white, just lines, and then I outlined the circles there. But I really like the play of this. It's the same shape, but it gives it a totally different look. So the next one in the book here was concentric circles. And I was really worried about this. First of all, it's done in these really bright colors. And if you are worried about it, she gives you the exact colors that she's using. However, I'm trying to make it more relatable to myself. So I knew that I could do the circle idea, right? I knew that I wouldn't have a problem with that, but it was the brightness of this one, the circles, the being all in blues and greens. And she gave you a really great roadmap to follow for adding just the colors at first, adding some different textures, and then adding the marks, right? So I was like, okay, I think I can do this. Let's give it a try. So then I decided first to play with colors. And I knew that I wanted to add this green. I really like this mint green from Da Vinci. And then I was like, let's try a like cobalt blue because I knew these two would mix really nicely and make a really pretty color. So this is my Daniel Smith Cobalt Teal Blue. And then I added Daniel Smith Indigo because of its darkness. I knew if I added that to any of these two, it would dull it quite quickly. And you know me, I like dull colors. So here again, I was playing with metallics. These were the 3 metallics that I chose. And let's see, can you see the brightness there? So I've got a dark here, a medium, and the gold kind of color there in the metallics. And that represents these. I was also playing again with my circles that I really like, but then I was trying to do, she does a beautiful grouping of dots with her brush. I'm still trying to master that. I haven't got it yet, but I'm learning. I'm trying in all different ways to try to get that. So with these colors as my muse, these were some of the mixes where I mixed the indigo into them to see what kind of darks I could do. Here was my overall piece. And you can see it's okay. For me, it's okay. I like the circles. I love the circles. What I didn't like about this is I left too much white space. So in here, I didn't like that I used a dark area, dark marker on this big white space. I wish I would have done something different there. I didn't like the big circles here. To me, they stood out a little too much on this inner ring. However, I really liked everything else about this. I like the way that I found different textures in there. The middle is one of my favorites. I'll bring that up to show you. But I also like how I worked in the metallics. This is the first time that I really worked them in differently, and I like the way that I was able to use them. And you can see there all the little dots, all the little areas that pulled up there. There's straight without the light, and there it is with the light. So you can see how much metallic is on there. And I can bring that up. So there it is with the metallic showing. And here it is without the metallic showing. A big difference, right? But I like that you can see it 2 different ways. And then here's my center. This has kind of become like my main mark. It's like, I call it like an amoeba, but I like the white lines that come off it, how they cross and they're not all straight. So that's a little different for me. Normally I would make them straight like a stamen almost. So coming up with something like this started way back in my elements area, and I've kind of carried it through. It's developing, and I like that about myself and about the mark. I also liked that I was able to add a darker line around this greenish area. So you see that it looks a little darker right next to it, and then that's where I chose to put the light marks, the light little dots. And then I took the combination of this color and added lines going through this white area here. And I liked how all 3 of these then connected. And let me show you that up close. So you can see that plus this added those really faint lines of that coloration. And then can you see the little darker edge there where I added the white dots. So I am liking that, and it's holding with me like, okay, I can do that for the next piece for sure. So because I wasn't 100% happy with this one, I did another one. So this one I decided to just do in grays, and so I did a warm gray, a cool gray, and then a more neutrally black gray. And again, I was trying different patterns. I was trying to see if I could get a Q-tip to work, an eraser, some paintbrush dots. Remember, I'm trying to figure out her area here. Here I used different white tools to see what I could come up with. I used a Neocolor crayon, a China marker, Derwent Inktense white, Derwent drawing white, Posca pen, Uniball Signo, and then white gouache. So here are all my little marks, trying all the different things to get the dots the way that I want them. And then here's my experiment with all the different tools. And I like seeing them. I like seeing how different and how strong they are, because sometimes I might want a lighter area like this. So that's giving me ideas on, oh, it doesn't always have to be so bright. The thing about hers is she always uses that bright white pencil, and sometimes for me it stands out too much. I like things a little more subtle. So I enjoyed pulling out all the little white tools that I had and trying them on the extreme here with the black and different grays. And this is the piece that I did here. So on this one, you can see that I left white spaces. I mean, look how much white space is left. I left it here, I left it here, I left a line of it there, but I didn't go in with darks. I went in with light values because I know that I like that better. If I would have went in with the black pen, I would not have liked it as much. One of my favorite pieces around this piece is where I took the dark line again, that dark area, just like I did in this green section here, only I made it really dark. So this circle is that full length here to here. So from here to here, that is one color, but I came in with a darker gray, and I just kind of took my brush, stayed on the tip and flattened it a little areas to make it fatter, and I just kind of zigzagged around up and down like that. And so what I did first was I outlined those two areas. I outlined the bottom and the top of it, and then I decided to add the lines on the top. So what it does is it makes all of this now feel like one area. Actually, all of this area here from here to here. It's almost like it has that dark center in the middle, and I really like the way that that turned out. So let me bring you up so you can see that. So you can see there, that is that dark line where the top I added just the lines. Here I outlined that little stripe. And you can see I've got little outlines here, but see how all those kind of connect really nicely together. And that's what I was missing off of the blue one. Again, I did my amoeba-like thing in the middle here, only I extended it. You can see here it's long and skinny, but it is going to the darkness. But here I wanted it to really fill a little bit more. And you can see it's quite large on my scale there of what I'm filling with those little amoeba antennae. And then I decided to add these little marks just up here in the corner just to carry that little detail forward. So I was much more pleased with this one. I really enjoyed it. I think probably too that it's a square and it's a little more true circles instead of more ovals too. That's really what I enjoyed about that one. So you can see I'm evolving. You can see that I'm starting to think, okay, but what would I do? How can this become more me? How can it feel better for me? You know, these are definitely more my colors than these bright teal colors. And so whenever I'm doing the marks, I'm a little more comfortable here because I'm not fighting the color. I'm just thinking about the marks and what's next. So the next thing was this little landscape, and I love that it felt like a landscape. Now, when I did this, I tried to follow some of her ways, but I also wanted to just do my own thing. I didn't want it to become exactly like hers, even though I loved it. And I love that it reminds me of just like a quilt sampler that's all landscapes, and I think that's really fun. So again, the first thing I do is play with colors to try to find colors that represent me. So playing with these and giving myself a couple tools, I wanted to play with a black pen down here and a white pen just to see how it works on these colors. Again, my quest for her dot pattern is up here. I used brush tip, Q-tips, and then just staying on the actual brush tip myself. Here was, I did some lines to try the gouache with a Q-tip to see if I like the way that those come. So you can see I'm getting closer, slowly but surely. And then here is my piece. Now it feels totally different than her piece. Look at her piece. See how landscapey it feels? And she used much bolder colors. And for me, I used her kind of breakdown of where the squares were, but I kind of did my own thing. I'm wanting to break free now. I like that her book is there so that if I'm having a hard time, I can kind of refer to her book and go, okay, I can add this now. But I did so much experimenting on the sample pages that I kind of just wanted to do my own thing. So I looked at what I had and what I could do and expand on. Like I have several new things here. I've got this little area that's new, the little fish area here, this little area, it looks like a sea urchin to me. I've got this area, which is my favorite. I've got a little amoeba thing here and here. And then I just kind of played. I played with singular circles. I played with singular lines, regular lines, cross lines. Here's little wavy lines. And I love the way that it came out. So let me kind of show you those up close so you can take a look at them. And you can see I used the white pen everywhere. I didn't like the dark, so I didn't use it. And this piece here, this is actually one color block. So I want you to see that I have 1, 2, 3, 4 different textures in there. So I really feel like this piece progressed me a lot because I'm like, okay, I'm getting the hang of it. I'm feeling really good about this. What else can I do? And how can I experiment a little more? Even though if you would have told me that I would have done this without really looking at her marks just for what I was feeling, if you would have told me that when I started this book back in May, I would have been like, no way, because there is no possible way that I would feel comfortable with this. But what I find is it's very meditative. When you have your colors done, what you really do is study each little square. So you're just looking at this square and I'm asking myself, what do I see in it? What can I add to it? What does it feel like? You know, like this, I actually had like a wave line in it and it looked like a fish. So I just decided to make a fish, right? This one here, I like that it had I added the 3 little trees is what I call them. But then this side, I was thinking of land and sea because of the blue and the green. So when you're looking at different things like that, I want you to bring your own personality into it because that's what makes it really fun. The next piece was the irregular pebbles. Now, again, these colors are not really me. I'm not a big blue person. However, I love this coloration over here. So do you see the difference of this rock versus that rock? Do you see how more subtle this one is than that one? So when I was looking at that, I was like, okay, I can do this. And this page, I have to tell you, was really scary for me because I liked it so much. I like the rocks and the different shapes. So again, I played with colors. These were some deep light granulating colors that I had gotten. So I wanted to play with them and see what they would do. So here I let them kind of bleed into one another, right? So this and this equals this. So this and this equals this. So they're just kind of playing, but I liked making almost like little rock shapes. Here I wanted to see what colors push each other. You know how you have those pushy colors that if you have wet and wet next to one another, one is going to go in and one's going to like kind of repel it. So that's what I was looking for in here. So I saw that the yellow went into the green went into this. Neither one of these really pushed in. This one pushed into this one pushed into that. And that's what I was looking for. That's why I stacked them like this. And I tried to do them all while they were wet on wet. Again, it's a way for me to play. It's a way for me to figure out what kind of colors I wanted. And you can see that my colors here are totally different than her colors here. I mean, look at the two. I can't think of more contrasting. Where I wanted more mossy greens and a little bit of red and a little bit more of the kind of, it's a bent grass color. So think of a sand color, right? So totally different because I got rid of this blue, which I didn't like. And again, you can see that I'm getting better with, these were dampened tip on the Q-tips into multiple colors, and I like the way those dots look. Here I was introducing a new pen into my darks. So this is a Pilot G-Tech 04, and I really like that a lot because I like the fineness of it. So when I went and did these rocks, I kind of followed her shapes. You can see a little bit of her shapes here. So I did like from that part down because mine was more square page. And I really liked having something to follow for the rock shapes, especially because I knew I wanted to get it really close because again, I really liked her representation of the rocks. So when I was doing mine, I like when I'm painting to give them light and dark value, especially like think of this one. It's really light over here and it's really dark. So think about edges. This is a nice hard edge, which means you really see it. And this is a softer edge, which means it kind of fades into the white of the paper. And you can see I did that here on the green. It's a little lighter up here, a little darker. Here I did it. So it's a little lighter here. It's a little darker here. Here I did it a lot with colors. So I have these two edges kind of lighter, but then I let it go darker here and here. So playing with the edges is something that I haven't been doing, but when I was doing the bigger shapes like this, I was like, okay, let me play with that and see if it makes a difference in the way that I'm handling the design, the textures, and all kinds of things like that. Again, I didn't really follow what she did except for on this egg or this rock here. I liked how she had the stripes. Now, once I got the stripes totally finished, it seemed like an Easter egg to me. And I wish I hadn't followed her directions because I like the ones that I did on my own a little bit more than that one. But that's okay, right? We live and learn. That's how we learn. My favorite one, again, here's my amoeba. And look at the shape that it took here. It was where this dark color or this light color bent grass pushed into this rock. So I got a little bitty wavy area here, and I took advantage of that to make my amoeba. I really like this one. It looks like a piece of marble. I like this one because it just seemed like almost like an arrowhead sticking in the rocks, and I like that. So let me show you my amoeba here. Isn't it cool? See where it splashed and took over that rock in that little area? And then this is my big marble piece up here. And you can see the shapes. So I had left some white shapes in there and I just kind of connected them and had a little fun with them. And then this is my little arrowhead piece. So I hope you see like I'm changing, right? I'm adapting. I'm becoming a lot more comfortable with my own marks and my own thinking. And I've learned to just, once the watercolor part is done, because that's the part I truly enjoy, is making the different values and using my own colors. Once that is done, I come into the relaxing mode now. Okay, what do you see? What do you want to feel from here? What do you want it to look like? And when I looked at this piece, it seemed like marble. So I was like, okay, let's add some marble veining. So one of the first pieces I did was this little curvature up here, and then I connected it here. And then I just liked adding something into the darker area to see what would happen if I did that. And I just like the way that it came. The white part for me almost becomes meditation. And I didn't think that would happen for sure in this book. So the last piece I'm going to share with you in this study number 2 is the scallops. And I have to say, this piece, I absolutely love the way that it looks, and I absolutely hate the coloration. So there's my dilemma. I am not a blue or green person. Everything about this page is just very blue and very demanding. And it's also very dark and very light. So there's no middle tones in between. So when I was thinking about this, like, how am I going to do that? I always start with color. So here I was playing with a bunch of different brands, and I knew I wanted to add kind of like a purplish blue instead of a royal blue like she had. So as I'm playing with the colors here, I'm liking several of them. I like them if they are granulating because I think it adds a lot of texture. I did want to use one of these blues. I thought, well, let me force myself to use one of these so that it does still feel like scallops, because I'm thinking of a mermaid's tail when I think of scallops, which is kind of funny, but that's what I'm thinking. So in order to play with these, I was like, okay, let me have a dark green, just something that I could play with. And I ended up choosing this color, this color, this color, this color, and then this one down here where I added a little bit of lavender. And this is what my piece turned out like. I ended up using masking fluid to get my scallop lines there, and I was happy with that. I didn't want to have to think about going around those lines and painting and everything. When I'm painting, I just want to paint. I don't want to concentrate that hard. So when I was doing this, I did use her book a lot for what kind of textures she used. Now, you can see in her book, she used a lot that came down from the center. So you can see there's one, there's one, there's one. She's got all these up here. And they were okay, but for me, they were gold, and I didn't really want to add the gold in this piece. So I just kind of played with textures. Like I thought of this as more like a neckline. So let me put that in there. I liked where I did more like little concentric circles in here with the same color. So think of it was this green. I added a little bit of dark green and then added the soft circles in here. And then down here, I just outlined them with white. I did the same thing down here with the lavender. You can see my concentric circles and then adding the white. I added a couple little layers with like dots and that kind of thing, but I was not happy with this. It was okay. So as I was doing this, what I wished for in my head, I said, I wish I would have done this with just starting at the corner and just adding colors as I went, because this one I did like, okay, let's paint this one violet, this one violet, this one violet. I just kind of did each color as I went, right? And it was very methodical, and so I didn't have the fun of playing with the watercolor. So for my next piece, I knew I wanted it to look like scallops again, but I wanted the freedom of different colors. I wanted to use lighter colors, think of more pastel palette, but I also wanted it to be reflective of a mermaid's tail in the water. So for me, when I did these concentric circles, I really like those marks, and let me show you those up close. So you can see the lines with the paint, but then also the lines with the white. And then I have another one down here with the purple. You can see that as well. So then let's go to my next page here. And these were the colors that I wanted to play with. I wanted something soft, simple, and totally different than the page before. And I knew the scallops would not show up as defined as that dark coloration, but for me, I thought I could have a little more fun. I'm gonna really make this all my own. I'm not gonna pay attention to her piece at all. I just wanna see what would happen if I just did what I felt like doing. And for me, that was a lot of courage, bravery, just like almost bucking the system, because I was like, heck no, I'm not gonna follow her rules, right? So I wanna do something that feels like me. So when I did this, I was like, oh my God, this is so fun. What I want you to see is the scallops are not defined at all. But what I want you to notice is there are little concentric marks. I've got them here. I've got like a couple circles where I just kind of followed the area. I wanted those concentric marks because when I was doing this page back here, those were feeling like, think of light going over rocks in the water, and that's what it was reminding me of. And these two were the ones that I really felt comfortable with. So I continued to do all of that kind of thing here. So I started with the watercolor here, and I just started up here and I kept it wet all the way down until the bottom here. Then I let it dry. Then I came in with the almost same color that it was done in and added those concentric lines. So you can see I've got like a line going all the way down 3 little spots here with the pink that I liked. I've got this blue, it's over here, it's over here, it's over there. So it goes over four items, but I found different ways to make the circles and the little lines. I liked the softness that it was giving me before I inked everything. When I was working with it, it gave me a feeling of peace, and I could almost hear the water washing over the rocks because of the way that I was kind of meditating that. I was thinking of a mermaid's tail being washed over the rocks there, and just kind of the water coming in and out. And think about the water coming in and then the water going back out. Think about that kind of motion. That's what I was thinking about when I was doing all these lines. I actually turned my book and I was, placing my lines kind of deliberate, seeing where else I could go with them. Like this one, I just liked the circle here, so I did a circle. I did another circle here, but I was totally not thinking about anything but what I could find within the shape. So whatever I could find through my washes, and how could I make it feel like me. And you can see I've got two little amoebas here. I've got one here and one here. So those were just solid pieces of color that happened when I did the wash, the initial watercolor wash. And so I decided to just make those part of my amoebas, because remember, that's kind of become a signature throughout this exercise, and I'm liking them a lot. So let me show you that. So do you see the pattern and the fun that it has? And I'm just letting it kind of free form. I'm letting these kind of show with some dots. Some I'm adding lines. Some I'm adding like more vertical lines. Some I left just how they are. Some I have little circles. The circles I was thinking of watercolor bubbles. Here's the other amoeba. And there you can see it's around the circles here that I chose not to do anything around that one. But then this one I added white lines. So it's totally a different appearance than this one. You see, it's like a stark dramatized difference, right? But this one does not feel like me at all, where this one definitely does, even in the marks, even though the scallops aren't there. However, I want to show you when I tilt it up, you can see I used a silver metallic pen under these scallops. So watch it again. See how flat it looks? But as I raise it, you see the dark line of the metallics there. And so I enjoy that that's kind of a surprise. So this is where I am in my Creative Abstract Watercolor book. I'm only on page 59 through 59, and I am enjoying it immensely. I'm about halfway through the book, and I am really enjoying finding myself within these pages. It sounds weird, but I never thought that I would connect with pieces like this. I loved her book and her pages and all of the beauty within it, but I never knew I could create that kind of beauty that represented myself. And that's a huge learning curve from a book of abstract watercolors to someone like me who doesn't think abstractly at all. But what I've learned is, instead of going against the marks and thinking I can't do it, I let myself just sit and meditate over the piece, kind of like, okay, what am I going to start with here? Like I said, I started with those concentric circles or the little marks that reminded me of ripples in the water. And then I just went from there. I have enjoyed finding a different part of me that wants to come out and play as well. Isn't that exciting that a book can do that for you? So I hope that if you have this book, Creative Abstract Color by Kate Rebecca Leach, that you pull it out, you give yourself time to just sit and play and discover what part of you is waiting to come out. I will list study number 1 in the video description box below. And if you were inspired by today's comments and art, please let me know in the comments. If you haven't subscribed, please click the button. And as always, thanks so much for watching.